what is in your entire being, it's a big thing. What is grounded conversations?
It's this kind of, it's, of course, grounded conversations includes the Marys talking and questions and answers. You can ask anything you want and explore that. The Marys are always going to meet everything. I love, they say from the loft view, they offer different perspectives. They talk with us, not at us. And they invite us to talk with ourselves and one another. And so the groundedness, like, maybe the opposite of your daughter, not grounding your kids, like making them stay somewhere against their will and not get to have any fun. It's grounded in a way of let's actually like ground and be present and curious and excited and depthful, and hilarious, whatever it is. But let's be real and come together and tap into what does matter and how can we work through things or see ourselves differently or give ourselves and others grace that maybe we haven't before, because maybe we have a different perspective or idea. It's the opportunity. Marys are spirit. Let's talk about the opportunity to sit on the couch next to spirit, ask anything you want, and also hear what other people might be asking, and then to be able to absorb and be grounded, be present, be there for yourself while you're having that discussion that can be about anything that your heart wants to know more about, or you want to solve, or you want to invent, or you want to just understand how it works. And when we have, conversation that's grounded or present, it's just, it moves things, like even, you giving your dad that opportunity to ask him if that was true, right? Like it's an invitation to get to be and to be in with a community of people who are showing up to care about themselves and one another and care about this life that we're living in, life itself, and how we can cause the best possibility while we're here for this brief moment that we're here in our current expressions. And so it's grounded. It's coming together, not with, it's so interesting. I don't want to say with like-minded people, and I get what that means, but really differingly minded and differingly spirited and differingly souled, people that when you come together into the mix and you come together with the promise, because that is a piece of it, is you commit to being honoring really of yourself and each other in the circle of really showing up and taking in and holding space and having space held. And sometimes the conversation can go into some pretty deep emotional importances, and sometimes it's just thrilling to really know that our grandest idea of our possibility gets to be alive and gets to cause, and how we can move that and stir it and stimulate it and be nourished in it and through it. So grounded conversations, it's once a month, coming together with the Marys in this community that's showing up ready and willing and present and interested and curious and interesting. And one of the things I love is that when, you might come in and you don't have a question, or you don't know how to have a question yet, or you have a billion questions and you're asking one. Really, if you listen, you listen to yourself listening, and you listen, with yourself, any one of those questions you could take and extrapolate and bring tools and insights and ideas of how to put into your own life in your own way. And it's just an extraordinary opportunity to be in what could become one of the greatest conversations that has been, not out of like measuring that, like, oh, it's better than this or that, but like a nurturing, fulfilling, grounded, embracing, and inspiring place to show up every month. That's why I show up. what's going to move. It's what catapulted me to want to do it. Like, what are people thinking, and what are people curious about, and where do people want to take themselves and each other, and how can we actually stand up and do who we really are, instead of in those tangles and messes, and even in the midst of those tangles and messes, feel the conversation between the brilliant and messy part of us, and how they can care for each other and support each other and catalyze each other, into, you don't really want to catalyze your messy all the time. However, maybe in a way that what can I gain from this? So, yeah, that's what conversations are. And it's community. It's knowing that I have somewhere to go. And, my encouragement is always, keep a little pad of paper and pen with you, because we have these brilliant questions. Sometimes when we first wake up, sometimes in the midst of the day, write it down. Hey, I can ask the Marys about that. Or, I can bring this to the community, and I have somewhere for it to go, because sometimes you're like, I don't have anyone in my life I can talk to about that, or I wouldn't know how to bring that up, or I wouldn't know, whatever it is. There's somewhere to take it and to grow it and to learn from it and to gain and to bring yourself to. So that's a snippet.
A
What it's
snippet.
about. like the Marys said, dip your cup into the edgelessness and sit down and have a great conversation, right? There's no limit to what can be explored and how it can be explored. And and the Marys are always like, do you understand? Do you have an argument? Do you have an excitement? Whatever, let's go.
Absolutely. Can you, if you can, like, what are some of the, obviously keeping confidentiality in the community sacred, right? What are some examples of questions that people have asked or could ask? Like when you say, like, don't know how to formulate a question or show up with 1,000 questions, right?
Right.
Like, give me some examples.
Oh, that's so funny. Because I don't have a brain that works like that. They can go, oh, here's a thought bubble or a particular memory. And so I could sit here and try to call it up through my memory cells. Oh, it's so funny. I can feel them more than I can hear the actual questions. Trying to even just tap into like one of the questions in the last one was, oh, it's so interesting. It's so funny. I can't think of the exact question, but what it made me think of was a question that came from another group that came together. And the question was, what are people for? And I've always thought that's a fascinating question. Like, what are people for? And to hear the Marys talk about that, right? And then how you can absorb it and take it in and recognize, what, not like what's the purpose of people, which that can be in there. But what is it really about? Why are we people? What's going on? And to be able to sit and feel spirit, give you from the loft view, the true knowing of what that possibility and promise and, chosen practice can be. And it is edgeless. It's unlimited. We've had people ask about, the different things that are occurring in the world right now, what's going on. The Marys often will talk about, our systems, we're in this transitional time between separation and union. And so all of the systems built in separation are going to collapse, but that's not like a threatening doomsday comment. That's because they have to, because this other way that really feeds and nourishes us, that we're here to usher in, is in the soil and ready. And so it's, talking about looking at what's going on with, maybe our political world or our medical world or our educational systems or whatever, with this other view, this wider awareness that the Marys can bring in, that they don't they always say, we don't have magic bags of answers in the sky somewhere we drop from. They look into us and everything we're connected into, which then becomes the all, right? And can help us kind of tune into that, plug into that, have that for our own awareness, for when we have our own inquiry or questions. And you just get to see it from a differing viewpoint that feels so much more possible, because, there is so much going on. How do we ground ourselves? Remember how to move in it, know what we're actually for, not like what are people for, but like, instead of what are we against, what are we for? And kind of reformulating our perspective from that, and knowing it's not about a euphoric idea of a promised world. It's like right in the middle of the nitty-grittiness of it. How do we live the desire that we are and that we have in the midst of a world that has everything moving in it? And how do we leave our trace? How do we experience and live our trace and then leave our trace when we go? And so, it can be, people have asked very personal questions about just, this is something I'm dealing with. Can you help me with that? And the Marys, of course, they'll answer very specifically with the person. They also, at the same time, simultaneously open it up so that others can take it in and apply it to something maybe they're moving with. So it's really a question for the one and an answer for the one and the all. And some people ask about, world situations or past life experiences, or how, where do people go when they die? It can be anything. Why did my, now I was just gonna say, why did my neighbor build that shed? you might not get the like what, what was your neighbor thinking? They don't like psychically go in and say, well, this is it. It's like, well, let's talk about what's moving with you in association with that. And they really help you to realize why you want to know why your neighbor built the shed, which is infinitely more important and mattering to you than why your neighbor actually built the shed, right? So it really can go anywhere. Yeah, maybe, the next time we talk, I'll bring a couple of the questions that have been asked. But it is, I do know, like, it's just so rich to get to have a place you can ask anything and actually get an answer. And in that, some of you know that might listen to this, some of you don't know. The Marys talk a lot about that, the idea that there is the answer, and is kind of cruel. And what they mean by that is, like, we so often think I have to have the answer, or be the answer, or you need to have the answer for me. And it like crushes us somehow. If you think about that, just the pressure and the burden and the, that just comes in with that. And instead, if you can know, I am an answer, and I have lots of answers in how I move and how I think and how I can contribute and how I ask questions. Actually, I am an answer. And then they say the answer is the combined of the all. Then that becomes the answer. It's so crushing. I'm going to use that word again sometimes. And maybe some people think it's thrilling to, like, I have to have the answer. And that's what drives them. Then Marys would say, that's great. Then lean all the way into that. That's what's for you. Like, do what really feeds you. But it is to take that out and know, oh, it's all about these answers that then I get to blend with who I am in this unique expression of existence that I am, and have it cause more questions and also help me to be more of an answer in many different situations. So when you bring a community together, whether you agree with everything or you're interested in everything that everybody's talking about, you get to become more and take that with you. And the Marys are always like, don't leave it here, take it with you and bring it through you and see what that is for you in your world. So I've gotten lots of people sending us notes of how it's been just really rich and enriching, and how it is showing up in places in their life, like, gosh, this thing happened, and all I could think about was that conversation we had in our last round of conversations, and it was so helpful. So that's the hope for it, that we can keep lending to ourselves and each other and start generating more and more of what we need in a moment, and knowing we have it.
I love that. One of my favorite things to ask the Marys is like, what do they really mean by something?
Yeah.
Like,
Yes, yes. Which is
um,
great.
because I find it so, and I have that question for everyone. I'm like, what does that mean for
Mhm,
you? Right? Because I
mhm,
think that it's
mhm.
so personal and intimate for every individual and
Yeah,
just has like 1,000 different stories wrapped into like a statement,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it's fascinating to me because like the Marys obviously have, 20, almost 23 years. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Almost 23,
23.
coming
I'm
up on
thinking,
23.
I confused it for a minute with my wedding anniversary, which will be 25 years. So yes, the Marys are
Almost,
23. They came through in March of 2000. So yeah.
yes, almost 23. And sometimes I'm like, what do you mean by that? Right. And it could be anything from, what is separation to what do you mean by being fleshed of separation?
Yes, yes,
Right.
yes. The
um
flesh of separation. Yes.
and I bring that up because I find it fascinating that there is a difference in how maybe a level of interpretation
Mhm.
of whatever a word is,
Yeah.
or a phrase put together, that form, words that are put together that form a phrase, and like what we do with that.
Yeah, and I
As
love that. I
individuals.
love that about you and your conversations with them because the Marys don't want you just to say, yes, we agree with you. That's why they say you have an argument. And what they mean by that is, can we, an argument in union, right? Like, let's have a conversation. I need to understand that more. Can you tell me more about that? Or that didn't register. Can you help me maybe I don't agree, but maybe I do, or what does it mean to you? Like when you use the term, this or that, what does that mean for you? And if I might, I know you were asking them about one thing, and it came down to like punctuation. If you had put a couple commas in there, you would have heard it completely differently, which was how they meant to express it. But wasn't it wonderful that you got to ask? And they went, oh, let's go in there with you. Let's take a look at it. Let's see what that is. They really want to do that. Like, they are just so great at showing up with you, and they do, and because it helps them also, they want to be able to communicate and bring relief to this world and to our moments, and not always relief from something that's really heavy, which they also help us with that so much, but just relief in knowing we get to ask questions, that they have said you're an answer and an ask. Use both of those powers, right? So it is, so when you ask and they explore it, they learn more because they're always looking at, they're looking at how things are connecting with you, and they're always putting it out across the entirety of humanity so that they know how they could maybe bring something else through that could be very meaningful or relieving or helpful to people. So it's great.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I there's like two things, and that's why I asked the question, like, what are some of the things that are asked? And I do believe it can be anything.
Mhm.
And at the same time, I don't know, like when I personally in my sessions or in a group, when I ask for clarification on something, it also brings to me like a different level of confidence and courage within myself
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
able to share my voice in my level of understanding. And
Yes.
not to say that I was wrong in that, just maybe an openness to another layer of it.
Yeah.
Um, but
Absolutely.
first and foremost, it's more for me
Mhm.
about having courage to maybe explore something and then ask and explore
Mm.
it again and ask and explore it again and ask. And how do I
Yeah.
apply that? And did that work?
Yeah. Okay.
No.
Now that
Yeah.
I've had this experience, how does that move with it? Yeah.
Right.
And
Right.
that's another fun thing about the community is that, some people are coming in, they've spent a lot of time with the Marys, and they kind of get the lingo, which, anytime like you start a new job, there's all these acronyms, and there's a language to a company, and there's, you have to kind of learn how people even talk. So you kind of start to understand what they're talking about. And there's probably that little bit of a learning curve with the Marys also, because they use a lot of, like, Arc of Union and, just all different sorts of things. they're really good at, and you can say, well, what is that? Right. And they'll help you understand it. And it helps everybody, because maybe somebody on the call that says, oh, I actually went to a full day Arc of Union workshop, and I've worked with Arc of Union. Mary's might say something that evening, talking to somebody that was a novice or didn't know about it, that clicks something for somebody even who knew more. So it isn't, well, let's show up and, I'm a grad student at this and I'm a beginner at this. Good, because we're all beginning in every moment, and really the way the information is delivered, and when you really show up for a conversation, you grow. And so and you do get to say, wow, let me look at that from a different angle. And also, Tina, if you're in the conversation and Mary's answer something, you might raise your hand and say, you know what, can I contribute to that also? Because I had this experience and that really clicked for me. So I just want to share it. That's what it's about. It's not just, answering, question, answer. It's an opening to a conversation that we can all contribute to. So, and it's grounded. It's grounded in presence and richness and what's real. And again, that's whether it's full of levity or, it's really intense. Yeah, it's real. So,
yeah. I'm going to ask this question too. So I'm thinking about how
I'm having a lot of fun because I can see the sun shining in. You got rays of sun shining in on you from your window. It's really beautiful.
Perfect. What is and I'm going to ask this like to you, Jackie. So like, what's the desire? And I know you're going to answer it very openly, but I'm going to encourage you not to. Like, I really want to know, what's the desire that you and Don, right, have for having grounded conversations? Like, this is a year-long, 12-month, right, show up every single month, ongoing conversation from wherever you start, so that there is a place and a time and a container held in safety and embrace and love reoccurring, that people can show up in and have it. But what do you want to do with it? Like, what do you want it to do in the world?
Grow for the group itself, for the community itself, and for our experience in it is growth and progression. Like for it to build into entering into things that we know and that we don't know. And so part of what we really want is for the conversation to progress. And that doesn't mean there's ever a point where there's something that can't be. Everything is part of that progression, right? And what we want as far as like for the world is just imagine more and more voices coming together, more and more people. Mary's, and sometimes people feel disheartened or, it's getting hard or struggling. And how do I still believe in this world? And the Marys always say there's so many more people who are really about love than that, it's vastly more than those who are, kind of maybe their role or what they're choosing to do is to kind of interrupt that. And I want, my desire and Don's desire is for the world to have this conversation where this is what we talk about. The things that get talked about in there, the truth and the realness and the promise and the possibility and the really shifting how and who we are into the vibration of union, showing up with ourselves and each other in that way. Imagine more and more and more people coming together, more and more voices touching, more and more inquiry. And, it's fabulous to have a handful of people who get to have the vibration and the movement and the gift of being in this exchange. Imagine when, it can be more and more and more people. And now every time any one of us in that circle goes out, we're starting to carry that vibration into, multiple communities and cultures and ways of believing or thought. And that's what changes the world. And, so, to be a way shower, a change maker, I've never had like lofty ideals or ideas about that. I'm pretty simple. And yet when my heart and my soul and my being thinks about what would I love to know I participated in, to participate in having what the Marys bring to the world actually touch countless lives, and have those lives touch countless lives, because we're coming together in community to have these conversations and making that like a tremendous part of our experience. Not like, we meet once a month, but you don't leave it there. It's not only for Thursday night once a month. It's for, how does this start to move and weave into every day and every moment, and help each of us to know if we're telling ourselves the truth, and to be excited about asking ourselves that question, and to be, really involved in being able to lean in and ask that of others, and never from an against or a contrary place, from a let's be for each other, and remember that that's what people are, right? And so that's our vision, is to have it just grow and grow and grow, so that you run into somebody on vacation, or in your backyard, and you have no idea, and suddenly you can hear, or you can bring it into the conversation, or you hear somebody else talking about, say, hey, I know this conversation, and it starts to spread, and then love becomes the more significant movement in the world, even in a time that's so charged with the practice of hating, and the fear that comes with that. It turns up the volume and really helps to become the movement in our breath as we move with ourselves and each other.